Good evening, everyone. Britzza here from Geeks of Azeroth, and today I'm bringing something a little bit different. I'm joined today by the guys from the Worgen's Howl podcast. Guys, how are you doing?
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, we're doing great today.
So, Kaz, Frostee, obviously you're joining me on something that I'm sort of just coming up with. We've had guests on Geeks of Azeroth before, but this is sort of something different. I'm trying to think of a name for it as I stumble through the beginning. And I've got community drop written in front of me, but maybe we can come up with a name as we go through. But firstly, maybe you want to tell the listeners a bit about Worgen's Howl and who you guys are and what you do?
Definitely. I am a longtime Blizzard game player, longtime WoW player. I got into podcasting after being in FM radio over here in the States for a while. And I wanted to be able to do it again, but I didn't have the time or the ability to kind of get into a career in FM radio. And I was always kind of discouraged from people that I knew in radio because they said you could probably find better money anywhere anyway. So I'd already started a career, but I still wanted to be able to do something like it. So I started podcasting after years and doing different podcasts and starting and stopping some. We started to settle on the Worgen's Howl, and I really wanted to make a podcast that was centered on World of Warcraft, because I used to do like all Blizzard or all games or whatever it might have been. But the Worgen's Howl was like the first one that was like, we are going to center this on the World of Warcraft. And from there, it started to gain the, I guess, the following of other people in the community. And as we became friends with more people in the online Twitter community of Blizzard, and that just led to more and more things. And it kind of just snowballed to the point where we now have the dual role of talking about World of Warcraft news, but also focusing on the community. And we try to focus on the community more than news, because there's lots of WoW podcasts out there that talk about the news, and they're usually more current than we are and even more in depth. But we really love the community. Both Kaz and I have fallen in love with this because we think the World of Warcraft and the Blizzard Online community is some of the best and most caring people ever and most talented people out there. And we want to be able to have a chance on our show to talk about them, to spotlight them, help them, or, just kind of come together as a group of WoW fans.
That's brilliant. And I have to say, I'm completely, and I know I speak for my other co-hosts when I say that that's exactly the sort of thing that gets us going. I think the game is, one thing in itself, but it's the community and the players, I guess, that really sort of energize us and keep us doing what we want to do. But I have to say, it's incredible that you guys have been able to keep a World of Warcraft podcast going, because we started off, almost 2 years ago as a WoW podcast. And eventually, one, because we loved other Blizzard games, but also we just struggled to stay, talking about things so regularly. And, there's often a lot of droughts with World of Warcraft, but
yes,
it's and needs to say, I think we're kind of in the middle of one in some respects, but, it's incredible that you've managed to keep it so focused as well, which I think is more of a rarity now than anything else. 'Cause like you say, there's so much going on around, so many podcasts, and we're all just sort of crossing streams in one way or another. So, brilliant. So, I think maybe we'll just jump straight into the discussion topics. I normally, again, I said before the show, we usually have sounders and things like that, but I haven't got sounders for this. So, obviously,
it's all good.
Yeah, we'll just wing it. We'll do it live.
Doing it live.
Doing it live takes me back to the good old days, actually, of our early podcasting, where we didn't actually have sounders, so we just had to come up with it on the spot. So you guys have obviously been dipping into the Legion Alpha, and I know sort of like myself, real life has sort of sometimes stood in the way of that. But I guess perhaps coming from having more experience of it than I have, how do you feel about the Legion Alpha now? We've got a launch date, and we've had a real chance to see all the content going up to 110, or at least most of it going up to 110. I mean, what are your thoughts and some of the main highlights?
I'll go ahead and start. I think so far some of the main highlights is seeing the extent that Blizzard has put a lot of time into the art of the game. I mean, every expansion, of course, the art has gotten better and better. I mean, then there was a huge leap forward, I think, when Pandaria hit, and I think everybody could tell that there was a huge leap forward. And Warlords was beautiful as well. And Legion is nothing short of that. And even further, they've gone not only to create an even better world, an even more beautiful world, but they've been updating models and adding in so much more detail, even down to armor that now has more depth than we've ever seen in the game, I think, before. And from a beauty standpoint alone, Legion has impressed me greatly. I think Kaz could agree with that.
Yeah, and me being the artist of this group, like I definitely appreciate the artwork and the updated models. I'm an animator by trade, and so seeing the little tweaks to animations greatly pleases me. And
except for the spaghetti-backed horse.
Except for the spaghetti-backed unicorn.
The spaghetti-backed horse. I'm gonna have to look that up in a minute.
Yeah, the new unicorns in Legion, they kind of have a noodly back.
Oh, right.
Doesn't make sense.
They don't run like a horse. It doesn't look right.
But anyway, besides that, I think that they've done a good job at creating a large scope invasion with Legion. We recently played through the pre-launch event that was in the alpha, which was great. And I was in awe at how massive the invasion felt and how formidable of a foe the Legion felt. It was a whole bunch of demons, and it was hard. And it felt
certainly a lot of them.
Difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I liked that a lot.
And I think you're right in that it's just such. I don't know. I feel like in a way this is the expansion that, without knowing about it, we have been waiting for probably since vanilla. I mean, the Burning Legion was such a big presence. I mean, Burning Crusade, obviously, it was a huge element, but it feels like we've been sort of really gearing up for this fight in the background, and in some ways it's exciting to see how explosive things are going to get and just how heightened. We don't even know what the final tier is going to look like or what direction they're going to take it in. But in some ways, it's also, I think there's a little bit of nervousness. It's like, I don't know, the final performance that you've been rehearsing for again and again and again. It's brilliant that it's going to happen, but at the same time, what's going to happen after? I don't know, it's the wrong way to think about it, start thinking about the expansion after Legion, but still, it kind of leaves me a little bit nervous. And how do you top it? How do you top these, invasion events, and what else have we got left to beat up after this?
Exactly. It's just like you said, it's like, well, what do you do? I'm trying to remember who it was. I could see it in my mind, or I don't remember if I read it or heard it at BlizzCon or something like that, but somebody said this is one of the stories that they've always wanted to tell, and this is their time to be able to tell it. We always have seen the Burning Legion, like you said, from the Burning Crusade and throughout, all of the story of Warcraft. The Burning Legion has been right there at the forefront of it, and we are going to be confronting them head on. And the scope of Legion is, we're going to be fighting this seemingly unstoppable foe, and that plays into the artifact weapons. So it's interesting because they've kind of hyped the story up to the point where it's like do or die. And it's do or die not only for us in the game, and for a lot of the subscriber numbers, I would say that this expansion is really do or die. And so it's kind of in-game and out of game for WoW.
And that's it. And if my LFR experience is anything to go on, it's going to be a lot of dying. That's for certain. It's going to be painful. So I think you're right. There's a lot of things on the cards with this one, and I guess it is. With without going into it, all the stuff that's happening with Nostarius and a lot of the other sort of itching questions the community has about Legion and where it's going in terms of community and other features and garrisons, I guess, the Order Halls. It does leave it as sort of, this is Blizzard's sort of main chance to try and turn things around. Although I feel like, again, I say that, and it's not really turning it around. I still think it hasn't become less of a game. It's just, I think people expect more from WoW now more than ever.
I agree.
Oh, definitely.
I think that as WoW has gone forward, the game itself hasn't gotten bad. This is just my personal opinion, maybe unpopular opinion, hashtag right there. But I think that for the most part, the game hasn't necessarily gotten bad, but I think the game has gone on for so long. It's very, very rare that we ever see a game that goes on over 10 years with so many people playing it. And I think you just have to kind of understand that there's going to be a natural attrition. And there are a lot of people that I know that I've played the game with for years that played it forever. A lot of them just kind of got to the point where they didn't ever hate the game. They didn't dislike the game or anything about it. They just grew out of it. Whatever their life situation was, they had kids or they moved and got a different job. They just didn't have time. and they would come back to WoW if they, had time or the ability to, but it just doesn't allow for it. And I don't know if it's maybe a lack of kind of keeping a new set of players coming into the game as much, but I don't think the game is necessarily bad, but I definitely think that with the way that we see the game now, the kind of the lens that we look at it through, Legion is going to be where there's going to be a turning point. Either it's going to be a great expansion and it's going to give some extra momentum to this expansion that they've said they're kind of planning in the background for whatever would come up next, whatever that might be. Yeah. And if it doesn't do very well and there's a lot of problems, it could change the trajectory of World of Warcraft as we know it. So I think we're at a crossroads either way.
Well, I'd like to mention on the subject of the game changing and how long that WoW has lasted. It is quite amazing. Me, myself, I'm in the video game industry. I'm an animator in there, and I kind of work for a smaller company, so I can kind of see, all the different sides. Like a lot of the things are very visible. I'm not stuck in my own corner. I'm free to talk to anybody. And it's, if you stagnate, if your game and your developments stagnate, then, you won't get any new players. Players won't keep playing, and it'll just like go away. And that's like it is in any business. You can't let your product stagnate. You have to keep up with the times. You have to keep evolving to capture new people or to keep people involved. So, it's got to change. You got to evolve. That's what it is to be in a business. Like, think about, I know we're all part of Twitter, and everyone's always angry when Twitter makes a change. But you get used to it, and Twitter is doing something to keep themselves updated. We may look back fondly and be like, "Oh, the last version of Twitter was the best one." But to be honest, we'll just you get used to the new one, and then that's it. And then I don't know. You can't really say that one's better than another because it's just a change. It's different.
And I think a microcosm of that is when we see the end of expansions, when they drag on for an extremely long amount of time, like we've seen a few times. And I think that's when you've seen these issues come up where WoW kind of stagnates for months, maybe a year at a time. And only on a microcosm, you see subscribers leave the game. People get bored with the game because there's nothing fresh coming into the game, really. They might try to inject some small things here and there to try to keep some interest live, but it's just not enough to kind of keep feeding the machine, I guess.
Definitely. And it's interesting you mentioned about your background, Kaz, because one thing that I guess I feel really guilty about sometimes when we talk about the game on our show is that, Blizzard, like you say, they've had, like any company, they have new people come in with their own ideas and their own visions for how they want to, not just leave their mark on WoW, but also take it in a new direction. So I guess, a lot of the time people forget that, these people are coming into Blizzard with their own ideas and probably feel like they're getting bashed quite a lot because, whether they're illustrators or, game developers or, engineers or whatever. And, especially engineers, when you get things like the launch of Warlords, they get, attacked by hackers and things like that. From your perspective, do you think, what do you think the inside teams are feeling like, given the sort of the current feedback that's coming out of the game in terms of garrisons, but also I guess a lot of the positive stuff that's coming out, the excitement and things like that?
Well, I guess I can kind of directly relate with the WoW teams and stuff, because I actually work on an MMO, but it's an MMO for children. So ages 8 to 13 about, So
something with my skill level then.
Yeah. I mean, there's a ton. I see tons of parallels between the Blizzard community and this community that plays this children's MMO in how they react to things. We'll spend, a few weeks or months internally developing this new thing to put into the game. just to give you an idea, the game is called Animal Jam, so every couple of months we put a new animal avatar into the game that the kids can go buy, and then they can dress up and do mini games with this animal. Anyway, so we spend months working on developing this new animal. We go through tons of designs, and then it goes to modeling, and I animate it. Then we put all the accessories on it so it all looks good in game, and we release it. And, you know, me personally, I like to go look and see what the kids' reactions are to the animals. And when there's an animal that the majority of kids don't like, and there's the loud minority, the really loud vocal minority of bloggers and things that go, oh, this animal was the stupidest ever, its animations were so ugly, it's ugly as a whole, it kind of hurts, because we're like, oh man, we just put a bunch of time into that, we thought it was awesome, but they didn't like it. And you know, it's those loud people that kind of shape all the more quieter people's opinions, and it makes them voice their opinion. You kind of like bandwagon leap on these bad things and just like harp on it all the time. But I mean, but it does make us feel really good when we put in an animal that's like, yes, this is the kid's new favorite animal to play. Everyone's in there. You log on and there's like the majority are all this one animal. So, I mean, and internally when you're developing, you're putting all your passion into it. And so you're like, yeah, this is really awesome. We're really excited to see what they'll say about this. And then to just like be attacked or praised for that, you never know what will happen. So
it's unpredictable.
It is unpredictable. And I'm sure that, you know, at some point you just have to distance yourself a little from the community so that the attacks don't hurt. And you distance yourself from the product a little, but you still, I don't know, it's hard to put in all your passion into the product and keep yourself separated from it.
That's it. And I think you're right that you have to can't get my words out. You have to sometimes step away from the community, but at the same time, you know, I've seen people call Blizzard out on that and say, oh, you know, they're not listening to the community on what they want. But I'm totally with you. I think they need to, in some way, shut up that really vocal, or shut off, sorry, the very vocal minority who are sort of bashing the product, and really sort of keep going at it, because I guess it's too late to change by that point.
Right.
But at the same time, do you find that when you finally launch something, that both that sort of quiet majority, does their voice start to pick up? I'm just wondering whether developers finally get the praise they deserve once the product's actually launched and it's out there, or is it just always a case of hearing that vocal minority in the background?
Well, it's usually the vocal minority that hops on right at first and is really loud and really angry for, I don't know, the first week or so.
Sounds familiar,
right?
We
put new content into our game every 2 weeks, so the cycles are a little shorter for the hate, you know.
There are a lot of WoW people who would love a 2-week cycle.
Well, we only add a few things. It's like there's a new animal every couple of months, but every week there's new accessories and different things come back into the game or get removed out of the game. It's an interesting cycle.
Cool.
Yeah, once the first week or so is over and all the children, all the child YouTube bloggers and the bloggers, all that stuff kind of goes into the background, and then the kids start, you know, sending in the fan letters of the animals that they like, and they comment on the YouTube videos where we do animate these little teasers that introduce the new animal. And they're like, yes, I love this animal. Thank you, Animal Jam. You're awesome. So,
that's when you feel that warmth inside and you're like, yes.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, finally. And when I like actually talk to some kids in the neighborhood or my nieces and nephew, they always ask me what I'm doing. So I can get that personal satisfaction. But yeah, you just have to wait for the haters to die down, I guess.
Yeah, it seems like there's like an initial wave of that. And then if you weather that storm for the most part, the people that genuinely enjoy it will let you know, or they'll stick with you.
Yep, that's for sure.
Definitely. And I guess coming back from that, because it was actually a really interesting tangent in many ways. Do you think that the way Blizzard's handled sort of Legion's development, making it very transparent, and opening it up to streamers, and I guess perhaps in some ways things like streaming, as prominent as it is, wasn't around, certainly in Burning Crusade times, things like that. Do you think that does more good for the game than otherwise?
I don't really know if it's good or not for developers. On the one hand, you do get a lot more feedback.
Yeah. A
lot more feedback. On the other, like presenting a game in its alpha state to a broad audience, I don't know, it makes it so they'll instantly see all the flaws with it right from the start. And those might stick in their heads, as they go into the launch. But, alpha, it's not meant to be complete. It will have bugs. It will have problems. And so, I don't know. I think it's always better for a company to maybe keep the alpha closed and locked down. But it's kind of been a cultural change that has made companies open up their alphas and betas to streamers and stuff. It like the closed like super NDA betas and alphas are a thing of the past now. I think that's just a kind of cultural thing. A thing that gamers have come to expect.
Yep.
That they can go watch the alpha. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if it's particularly good. It must be, because a lot of companies are doing it and they do get a lot of feedback. I just think they'll have to weed through a lot of really dumb feedback, like, oh, this thing doesn't have a texture on it. You got to fix that, Blizzard. But yeah, I don't know. It may or may not be good.
I honestly think that for the most part, it's good, but I agree with Kaz that the alpha shouldn't be something that's generally out there. I think this is the first time that I recall that the actual alpha of World of Warcraft was something that wasn't under an NDA. I don't think it ever was any other time. And generally when the beta went public, you have a semi-polished game or it's almost done. And then it's great because it's great for publicity and everything is kind of fresh and new. But with the alpha being out there and kind of watching them develop basically as we played, it's been a very unique experience. So you see so many people out there streaming it, blogging about it, talking about it, whatever it might be. And I think for Blizzard, and especially where WoW stands, it might be actually a good thing in this case. And they know how to kind of weed out that, they've been doing this for years. They know how to weed out that feedback that's going to be obviously trolling them. And what we've seen as they've been tweaking the alpha and giving us feedback, and every time they do a build, they kind of give us a little status update on a lot of different things. I think that shows that they are really kind of they're getting in the weeds, cutting down all the stuff that doesn't matter. They're getting to the core gameplay of different classes and everything like that, and really kind of getting to the meat of it, to what's going to fix it. There's still, of course, lots of complaints out there on the forums or wherever else. For example, the class order hall follower mission things?
Yes.
There was the big blow up about it because it has the same UI as the Warlord's garrison mission table. And they had to come out the other day and be like, look, we're just using it as a placeholder because we don't have the interface done yet.
And all the naysayers going, you've lied, Blizzard, you've lied to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And so it's I think, they understand that that's something that maybe not everybody on the outside knows, so they kind of want to correct that curve. But like I said, I think the feedback they've gotten has been invaluable for them. And they said since basically the first day they announced Legion that they wanted to develop this with us in mind and alongside us. And so I think that's why they kind of broke the mold of not ever releasing alpha until this time because it is so pivotal.
And I think that maybe it's good for them as well, since there has been such a long time from Warlords to Legion.
Exactly.
That they need us to have something to talk about and keep us interested in the game. So maybe that's why they opened it up. I just wonder if maybe it's not true, but a little thought that popped in my head, will Legion be old news by the time everybody gets to play, since we've been talking about it and doing alpha in it so long now?
And that's actually a really good point, because I do feel like we are already in Legion. And if anything, you're right. After a month or so, I might even then be exhausted.
Even the launcher says it when you go into WoW now. If you've already bought it, it says you're playing Legion.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy about that.
It is, and it's a good point. It's because one of the things that they've always been concerned about is player burnout. People dipping in for 3 months can get into their 110 and then just unsubscribing. And if they've heard about Legion 7 months before that, that's 10 months of Legion, really, in a sense. Which is enough.
And getting back to the fact that you brought up the announcement of the date, that has affected that tremendously. Like, we've seen the impact of it just in our raid team. Since the date was announced, we have had multiple people on our raid team that have basically said, I'm out, I'm done until Legion. Or
dropping sub until
they're
Legion.
dropping their sub, because now there's like that finite time. They know how long there's going to be between now and the new content.
Okay. Fair enough. And is that just downtime that they're having, or is that just they're going to go off and play something else?
A lot of people I talked to, they basically said they're going to go play something else, whether it's Heroes or Overwatch. Of course, drops in a few weeks, so that's going to take up a lot of people's time. I know that.
Which before that, I don't think they might have been contemplating dropping their sub, but since they didn't know when Legion was coming out, they were still wanting to play like with us and stuff.
Yeah, they're kind of hanging on. Yeah. And there's those rumors, like some of the vendors, they put out that, I don't know if you'd call it a leak, but they put out their placeholder sales thing that said June 30th a few months ago. Yeah. And so a lot of people kind of, I think, were holding on thinking that was true, because that means that around the end of May would have been where the pre-launch event would have been. And then they got the confirmation, and I can't blame them, because if these are some of these people are people that have been basically mythically geared since way early on in the last tier. So they don't really have anything to work towards. And granted, they're good friends, and we had a lot of fun playing with them. I can understand not wanting to pay money every month to play a game that you're not getting new gear. You're just talking to people every week and playing a game with them 2 hours or so.
Definitely, yeah. And even I feel that, and I've still got so much I need to play for. I've still got the legendary ring to get, and I'm not a heavy raider. But
you're not alone.
No, I'm glad. We need a little community for those non-raiders. But that's the thing, is that for me, my end game experience is so heavily, based on the community, because I'm doing a lot of LFRs, and I do a lot of LFRs. I do LFRs, not necessarily a lot of them, but I also do things like Ashran, and I just sort of dip in and out of groups. I'm probably the casual player that Blizzard wants to target, who dips in for 30 minutes here or 2 hours there. But even then, it just feels so empty. The queues are getting a little bit longer, and everyone seems to be playing everything but a tank. So it just feels like, even I ask myself sometimes, why don't I just unsubscribe for a couple of months, and then I realize I'm just going to play other Blizzard games, and then I'm going to want to play WoW again, so I might as well not unsubscribe.
And it's interesting because, go back to like the peak of WoW back in Wrath, when they had their peak population, there wasn't a lot of alternatives to play back then.
No, there wasn't.
You had this game, and you could play StarCraft, but that was, StarCraft 2 basically was like right around that time.
Yep.
And you didn't have Hearthstone, you didn't have Heroes of the Storm, you didn't have Overwatch looming overhead, and Diablo 3 was, kind of like a new thing as well. But for the most part, if you're going to play a Blizzard game, you're going to be playing WoW back then.
Do you think then, sort of bouncing off that Blizzard's sort of current portfolio is not damaging to WoW? I guess I'll explain where I'm coming from. I think the thing about where Blizzard's going is they have to accept that where you've got so many games and so to speak, free games, Hearthstone doesn't cost anything to get hold of, and Heroes doesn't, and they're very accessible games. And the problem is, I don't think there's not going to be that gravity to keep people in one particular place, i.e. WoW, when they could quite easily dip in and, 15 minutes and play a Heroes of the Storm match or do something else. I just think in some ways they can't be that game anymore, because they've just got so much more going on. And so much more pulling other people.
I totally agree. I think that they have diversified themselves to the point where they can retain the audience of, I don't know if I want to just call them WoW players. I'll just call them Blizzard players
Yes.
at this point, because they can retain all of us. And whether we're playing WoW or Heroes, the thing is, you look back a few months ago, or not a few months ago, but a while back now, you could play for your WoW subscription with gold. Mm-hmm. And I know tons and tons of people that pay with gold. So Blizzard's not really getting any money out of them when you think about it. No. But if people, they're fine paying gold to stay in WoW and they play WoW a few hours a week or whatever, but then they go to Heroes and buy a bunch of skins. And then they buy the Old Gods expansion for Hearthstone. And I think the Hearthstone in the last investor call had almost 30 million people playing it.
Yep,
and,
easily.
Wow.
And imagine if all of them bought the expansion. That's a lot of money.
It's a huge amount.
And I think it really comes down to my personal feeling is that WoW, while it brings in a lot of money, is really not the cash cow of Blizzard anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not the central focus. It is a huge focus of the whole the company as a whole, but they have diversified themselves and they have built kind of I don't want to call it a web, but they've built a kind of a network where they can retain all of their fans and they just kind of funnel them into different IPs. And when I see people, not playing WoW, I see them playing Diablo, Season 6 is going on right now.
Yep.
People out there, tons of people on my friends list are playing Diablo right now, and usually none. And, when Hearthstone came out, my friends list full of people playing Hearthstone. And it's exciting because, just because they're not playing WoW doesn't mean that Blizzard isn't, influencing them that way. And I think that's part of their whole kind of master plan is to kind of just keep us involved in the Blizzard community. And I'm fine with that. Not everybody has to be a WoW player, but.
Well, let's think about WoW as a game. It's 11 years old now, and 11 years ago, subscription-based big MMO games were the thing.
That was the thing, yeah,
right?
Back then.
And as you've seen, the trend in general games, there's been a great move to the more free-to-play games, where it's you just have the optional cosmetic stuff that you can buy that, I don't know, that somehow funds the game. It's kind of crazy counterintuitive how it works, but it does work. So, with the trend of the whole industry going that way, Blizzard's kept up with that trend with their newer games, and that's a good place to be. But with WoW, since it's still the same game, it still has the same model, and they have the subscription. It causes a dilemma with all us players, right? We would have no problem downloading Heroes and only playing it, once a month for a couple months, and then 1 month we play it a whole lot. We'd have no problem because we didn't spend anything on that game, so we don't feel bad when we don't play it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about Warcraft, we're spending $15 a month on it. When we don't play it, we feel that burden. We're like, oh, I'm paying for this game, but I do want to play it sometimes, but I don't know if I'm getting my money's worth out of it. There's that dilemma that you have to reach, right? Of how much you're willing to spend on it. So, and if you unsub, that's it. You can't get the itch and play it because you'd have to resub for another month and play it for a month. So it's a difficult thing. It's an old format, but I don't see how Blizzard could change it up. I mean, it's just what it is.
Yeah, I think the same thing.
But I mean, we just have to accept that that's how it is. So dropping subscriber numbers, it's just gonna happen.
And I think it comes down, like I said, it's gonna be a thing, and they've kind of made it more flexible with being able to pay with gold. That kind of alleviates that burden. But I think the last thing I want to interject is, in the last probably year or so of Heroes, I've probably spent almost as much in Heroes, because I don't grind gold in Heroes. I just buy stuff. And when I buy stuff in the game, I've probably spent almost as much in Heroes in the last year as I would have on a WoW subscription.
I don't think you've spent that much. I don't know.
I bought a lot of Heroes and skins and mounts.
We haven't added it up. But there are those people who do it. But it's a different psychology, because you buy it once and you have it forever for whenever you go play. You have that skin. It's yours. It's not like dependent on a subscription, you know?
100%. Yeah. And I think one of the other weird things that keeps me in WoW is that, hopefully this doesn't sound weird, but I've been a player since 2007, and I still have my the first character that I ever made sitting somewhere in Northrend. He's been there for about 4 years, Dwarf Warrior, and I should go and rescue him at some point. But I feel like if I ever unsub for the game, and I have unsubbed in the past, but if I ever left the game for a long period of time, I feel like, you know, it's kind of a connection to those characters, a bit like, you know, you would with a D&D character or something else. I feel like that there's a pull there. It's a really weird pull. I don't know if it's a healthy pull, but it kind of, that's the thing that keeps me in the game. I feel like I've invested so much time in these characters that I can't step away with them without feeling that itch. And that's, in some ways, that kind of overrules the cost side of it. So yeah, I don't know where whether I'd ever even have the sort of the fortitude to be able to step away from characters and wave them goodbye.
I know exactly how you feel. I've been playing. I've kind of crossed that 10-year point, and you know, my old warrior, my first warrior that I created, he's still there. He's kind of hanging around level 100. But my main characters that I play, and I think we talked about this on like when we were on Behind the Avatar a while back. But personally, I'm the same way. I have a connection with these characters. I've seen them through thick and thin for, you know, a decade now in the game. And I've killed bosses with them. I've made friends, you know, with this online avatar, I guess you could say. And I want to see them out to the end, you know, wherever the course of WoW takes it. I don't want them to disappear, that kind of thing.
No.
I want to be able to stick by their side. I mean, they've, you know, kind of become a part of me, I guess, as I've played this game for so long. I don't know. Kaz has been playing a lot shorter than I have, than both of us.
Right.
So I don't know what her regard to that same situation would be.
I guess I don't feel that pull. My pull mostly to the game is to, you know, have a fun activity that like Frostee and I can do together and can talk about. And I love the game. I'm kind of a completionist at heart when it comes to gaming. So,
she is.
So things like, you know, all those missing mounts that I have that I need to collect still, that, and knowing that I still haven't beat Heroic Archimond of my own skill, that keeps me coming back. Yeah, like Frostee said, I'm new to playing WoW itself. I'm not necessarily new to Warcraft. I've been, you know, a fan of it since like Warcraft 2. But yeah, I've only been subscribed and playing this game since late Mists of Pandaria.
And something on the show that we talked about on our show this week is that I'll give another unpopular opinion, but I think, you know, in the game right now, we have a team that we raid, and we're on a server where we have a super huge guild, and we were in Convert to Raids. There's, you know, tons and tons of people in that guild.
Yeah.
But our raid team, about half of our raid team is off realm, actually. And as much as I say how much I hate cross realm stuff, especially when I'm farming mounts or whatever it might be, because I absolutely despise it then, when it comes to being able to play with my friends, I don't think the game has ever been in a better situation, because I can literally just pick up Twitter and find one of my friends on there or whatever realm they play on, and I can be like, hey, do you want to be part of a raid team? Do you want to go and do this in the game? And I can do it. And from a social standpoint, in my I guess opinion, the game has never been better. If you become part of like the Blizzard online community and you want that social aspect that kind of transcends not only the game but also into real life and back and forth, like it just doesn't get any better than it is now. You know, 10 years ago we didn't have Twitter to kind of do that with. And the game, and a lot of people that love the game have now coalesced into an awesome group on Twitter and other social media to where we can do these kind of things. And it's fantastic. There's community events all over the place where people go and they do old raids or they do whatever, you know, the event might be. And the social aspects of the game, even though they're not maybe the same as they used to be, but cross realm and things like that has allowed that to happen. And I think that from my perspective, the game is in a better place than it ever has been in that angle, at least.
That's a really interesting perspective, because I guess that perfectly segues into we'll lightly touch on the second topic. So we've actually had some really good sort of discussion going around just the first one, but it's interesting you say that, Frosty, because obviously so much of the chat about what's going on with World of Warcraft is centered around this idea of nostalgia and what seems to be that large portion of the community that wants to go back to the old game, as it was. And without sort of getting into the nostalgia, so although feel free to chip in your perspectives on that, would you say then that you feel that whilst nostalgia is a really good thing, that the evolution of the game is what we should be thinking about, and we should be driving that way rather than perhaps sort of looking back and trying to just go back to that warmer time and everything to do with that?
This is where I become unpopular yet again. For a few reasons. I right now I'm a law student, and I'm trying to specialize in intellectual property law, so it's like extremely relevant to Nostalrius. So the first time I read the story that it was happening and they were going to take Nostalrius down, like the first thing in my mind was like, oh, well, Blizzard has the right to. Like that was the first thing I thought. So, but I have like a legal mind, so like that's why I did it. And then I started reading more people's arguments about it, pro and against, and trying to look at it. The biggest argument, and Kaz and I talked about it, was that a lot of people are saying that the biggest reason that they want a nostalgia server back is that sense of community and that sense of social aspect that they had on their server. And I didn't have the same social experience that it seems like a lot of people had when I was playing in vanilla. When it came to getting a group for a dungeon, for example, that's like a lot of the people I've read their blogs and listened to their videos or whatever. One of the experiences they always bring up is like trying to make a group to go through a dungeon. And I remember sitting in trade chat or whatever, spamming like looking for one more for Dead Mines or whatever the instance might have been, just only to get into Dead Mines and have them either kill one boss or we can't even kill a boss, and then they leave, and you have to do it all over again. And I said that the evolution of the game has made it so much better, because I don't mind looking for group because I can queue for it. It'll automatically find people with separate roles for me. I don't have to watch chat or type or manage whispers or anything like that and assemble the group. And I can get in there and do whatever I want while it's waiting. It pops, I do my dungeon, and then I can go back to whatever. Back in the old days, it was, you kind of were stuck. You were kind of at the mercy of who you could find. And 99% of the time, whoever I grouped with back then, even though they were on my server and you could only play with the people on your server, I never even saw them again. I mean, so I made a few friends from it, I was in a raiding guild too, but most of the time the raiding guild, if we weren't raiding back then, if you weren't going through Molten Core or whatever it might have been, most people weren't willing to go and help you. Even we had a decently sized guild at the time. But it was kind of like, I felt like I was on my own most of the time anyway. So I know lots of people's experiences are the polar opposite of that. And I completely respect that.
Yeah.
I think, though, looking back, the one thing that if I had to say, if there's a nostalgia thing that I do miss, was just the simplicity of the rating tiers, how there was really only one difficulty, and it was really hard.
It was blooming hard.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that I really miss. Everything else, the quality of life things that have come, things like that, I am completely fine with. But I completely understand like that part of the game, because it was like I remember going and standing at the foot of Nax, and it's like I will probably never get to raid in here.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like when a new raid comes out, at least in LFR, the minimum you can go and raid in it, and that's fine. But back then, like just like that sheer kind of challenge, it was like standing at a sheer cliff and looking straight up at it and thinking, how in the world are we going to conquer this?
What about you, Kaz? Because obviously you said that you come in a lot sooner, I guess, into the game.
Yeah.
Go on, sorry.
Let's see. I've been thinking about this subject a lot lately, just kind of the nostalgic thing. I actually started a new podcast with my old friend from high school, and we do general video game news and stuff, and we focus a lot on old kind of retro games or games that were kind of left behind that nobody remembers from the past, that kind of thing.
Awesome.
And so, and I've always loved going back and playing some of my favorite games. You know, I'll get the itch and go back and play, you know, Zoo Tycoon 1, or I'll go back and play the first Sims for a little while. Yeah, so, something crazy like that. And you know, it's fun for, you know, a few hours or a few days, however long that itch lasts, and then I'm done, I'm good, I can go back to whatever. But I never thought about it that the World of Warcraft has been evolving and changing, and people have been playing it for, some people have been playing it for the entire 11 years that it's been out. And, you know, most of the games that I feel nostalgic about and go back to for a few weeks are, you know, they're games that it doesn't have like a huge community. It doesn't have, you know, it doesn't have multiplayer, and it's just a self-contained little game. You can beat it in a few hours. So I don't know, the nostalgia must be completely different than what I feel. And I guess I don't know if I can relate because I haven't been playing WoW that long. I just don't know what it's like to be like fondly remembering these communities of yore.
I think a lot of people, the nostalgia of the game is really personal to them. Kind of like our characters are personal to us. You know, and that's one thing that we really love about the game. I think everybody has their memories of the game. And, you know, millions of us have played this game, and we all have different experiences in the game. Some of us had life-changing experiences in this game, to be honest. And so it's different for everybody. And while I have like a really harsh opinion against things like private servers, especially, if Blizzard wants to go and implement, you know, any kind of legacy progressive server, or if they want to do pristine servers or whatever it might be, I'm completely behind that, because that's Blizzard's call, and I'm not going to stand in the way of it at all, because if people want to be able to relive that and be able to play the game again under, you know, like a sanctioned thing that Blizzard can license or whatever they might be, you know, working on in the background, I am completely 100% with that, because it's kind of like when like Kaz plays a game, you know, she gets to play that game anytime she wants.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting if Blizzard kind of goes forward and they do kind of carry out plans like this. I want to just see kind of how it plays out.
Yeah, and I think it's exciting that they could. Again, I totally support that Blizzard had a right. I'm very much on board with the fact that it was their IP and they deserved to shut down. In fact, they had to. I think because I know so many games that have tried to rip off WoW and other Blizzard franchises, and you know, you're just opening a portal then for them to start acting. I think, well, I say I'm not a legal expert unlike yourself, but there's copyright and trademark issues abounding when private servers go, and if Blizzard had sanctioned something like this and just let it happen, then it would have been a legal nightmare for them, to be honest. And the weird thing is from that is that I totally agree that it's exciting that what they could do with private servers to one, give people a chance, I guess, to live in that world that they want to. I guess, you know, everyone wishes they could go back in time, and in some ways, I guess this is that way to do it in game. But at the same time, I wonder whether people like yourself, Kaz, who have come to the game a little bit later, would ever want to see what the game was like, almost like a museum tour, in some weird, twisted sense of what WoW used to be like. Albeit, I share your view, Frosty, that you know that there are horrible experiences of me, you know, not being attuned for raids and getting shouted at by my guild.
Yes.
And I don't know if anyone still remembers the honourable and dishonourable kill system.
Yes.
And when I accidentally killed 20 civilians while my guild was hitting the barons, it certainly isn't fun. But at the same time, I'm really torn, because whilst I agree that those times had some really good moments for me, everything about the game really, as it is now, really clicks with me, because, you know, it sounds weird to say this, but when I'm online playing WoW, I'm naturally shy. I don't really talk much with the guilds that my various characters are split between. My time's very divided, admittedly through a lot of Blizzard games, but also just because I don't know when I'm logging on and logging off. I don't have a very regular schedule. And it just feels like the way the game's built really appeals to me. I can log in, log out. I don't have to talk to many people. That sounds horrible to say it for an MMO, but I do like talking to people. But it's just the game really works, and so I feel like if I ever said, it'd be great to go back to the old times, I wouldn't be compatible with the nostalgic WoW as it is, and that's the thing that really hits me. I would love to go back to that time, but I am not that person anymore. And part of me wonders whether the people who are calling out, and this isn't a criticism, but the people who are calling out for nostalgic servers, whether those people fit the game anymore, whether they have the time. And, bear in mind, you're right, it's been 11 years. These people, some people would have grown up and had kids and families and, changed jobs and all sorts of things. And
some people's kids are starting to play this game.
Yeah, exactly. If the kids are coming in, great. But I just feel like it's almost like taking the wish to go back in time a bit too far. And I not to say they shouldn't do it. I think they should. But at the same time, I think if they rolled it out, some people might be surprised at the uptake of a nostalgic server, especially when they're talking currently about, their sort of vision is about a game without features like heirlooms and tokens and all the stuff that actually speeds up the gameplay. I mean, I can only imagine what Warlords would be like if you didn't have any heirlooms.
Or a lot of even if they only went up to like Pandaria or anything like that. Yeah, any of that. It would be a very different place. I kind of want them to do it because I want it to be like an experiment at this point.
Yeah.
Just to see what happens, because I don't know. And then would they give us any numbers or any kind of feedback about it? I guess that's just to be told.
I think that's why Blizzard hasn't done it. It's too much of a gamble. They don't know if, people say they want it, but what if they really don't? What if they get back there and they're like, ooh, maybe I remember all this now.
Because Blizzard they do risk analysis and a lot of stuff on their end too. I mean, this is a huge financial investment for any of these kind of projects they want to do. So
yeah.
It's a very serious consideration.
Yeah, my opinion about it, if they can figure out a way to make it and have it for those people who want it without taking away any production from live WoW, then sure, I'm all for it. Myself, I don't even know if I'd go back and try it. Because one, I hate leveling, and I've heard horror stories of how hard it was to level.
You're in for a treat, Kaz. I can promise you that much.
And I don't know. I think the old art style, the old models, they've kind of aged in a way for me that isn't appealing at all. Like, I don't even have the nostalgia glasses on. They've just are not very attractive. So I don't know if I'd like playing in this kind of ugly world. I don't want to say ugly, but
shots fired.
Okay, that's probably the wrong world, but just like a lower res kind of blocky world.
Yeah.
When I started in Miss, when the huge turnaround of all their art assets happened, and so I don't know. I might give it a try for
experimentation's sake, for science.
But I don't see myself playing a nostalgia server at all, ever.
In a sort of a twist, and apologies if it's a bit of a doozy question, but obviously the community here, we spoke about it, is so important to sustaining WoW and getting people connected together. And I wonder whether you guys think that the community could actually support almost like a second WoW, that legacy community in the same, because Nostalrius was very, I think, siloed. I didn't even know about it until it was getting shut down, really. And I think, if they brought it into mainstream, that it would, I think, not just divide the community, but perhaps just confuse it in that, think you'd have to have like 2 sets of Icy Veins pages on like talents that are 10 years old versus the artifact weapons. And
right.
Yeah. And imagine like the patch notes would have to be like, this applies only to legacy realms.
Yeah.
This applies to, and like people that have the ideas of like realms for each expansion too. So imagine like the work just to put together a set of patch notes for, every expansion having its own realm and the live realm.
And then they'd have to talk about it at BlizzCon, and they'd have to, just all the publicity around it. They'd have to market it, and I agreed with the cost. It's huge.
That's a point that I hadn't considered, is that it would divide the community. And, they would the populations on the nostalgic servers be able to be in numbers that mirror what they remember from the past?
Yeah. I think it's an experiment that if they try it, which it sounds like they're kind of like leaning towards trying something, I'm excited. But I would say if you're on the side of really wanting to push, these things to happen, like, then you need to make sure that you go and support it. Like, don't just go on the internet and give like lip service to it and say, oh yeah, I'd totally be behind the idea. If you're behind the idea, then support it, because if you don't support it, it's going to be bad for everybody.
Do you think it would work where they did with Tyrant Mill and Molten Core, where if they did like a 2-week Legacy realm where you could go back to an expansion and just play it at max level, that? Would that work?
Oh yeah,
that would be interesting. I mean, we have time walking now, which they've talked about trying to figure out a way to make time walking viable for raiding. So this kind of springboards off a comment we got on our show a few weeks ago, and we talked about it this week, and I'll bring it up because I loved what the comment kind of spurred was the fact that like if they could get time walking for raiding going, that would just be outstanding. And if they really wanted to incentivize people playing on a Legacy realm, make it so that if you defeated Nax on a Legacy realm, then you earned like some mount or something that was unique, that
cool.
You really, really had to earn it, but it was really cool. And that would push people into playing for a really long time, because if you incentivize it right like that, there are people that will play it. I guarantee you. Even people that wouldn't normally play on a Legacy realm, they would do it for the completionist part, I think.
I'd never thought about that, about how it could actually add to the other. I guess a lot of people have been talking about it where I've been listening, of one or the other. I've never thought about it as, you're right, you could do a bit of content in the Legacy realm to unlock something, which I guess gets the community flowing as well between the two games, which could be a really good thing if you wanted to try and energize it. That's awesome. Make it so, Blizzard.
I love having a great conversation about this kind of topic, because it's been so divisive in the community in the past.
Yeah. And I think you've said it yourselves. It's an interesting experiment. Nostarius are now talking with Blizzard. Blizzard have invited them in, so clearly they want to engage in some way. But I guess it's coming up with something that can support what Legion and the expansions to follow are going to try and do, because it's tough. Again, it goes back to the developers. I feel really bad that probably a lot of the talk to them feels like they're doing all this hard work, and people are talking about the game that they made 7 years ago.
Yeah, it's got to be a very weird situation.
Yeah,
but we have this new shiny product.
Yeah.
back to the industry side of it. The video game industry is known for a lot of change. It's not a career where you stay at one company for your life. People move around, like, very constantly, are always switching jobs, moving around. And that's because you just kind of, maybe get bored of or lose passion for working on the same game for so many years in a row, and you want to try something new and exciting in your career. So, you're talking about a game that they made, 7, 8, 9 years ago, that you're like, yeah, we want that. And they're like, well, we're over that. We built it. Like, we don't really want to go back, but I guess, okay.
The guys who built it work at WildStar now, so...
Yeah, exactly.
The guys who worked on it and now work for different companies must feel very good about themselves.
So a lot of the crew is now working on... They move around internally a lot at Blizzard, too, so there was a lot of people who worked on Warcraft at the beginning who are now on Overwatch.
Look at the people who work on Overwatch and where they were, like, 6 years ago. They were all on WoW. Feel like Scott Mercer, I think he was like one of the raid encounter designers or something like that. Jeff Kaplan, all these guys just moved over to that team.
Maybe that's how the emergency meeting's going to go. They'll just rush into the Overwatch department and just go, guys, listen, you need to start working on WoW too.
Yeah, we know your launch is right around the corner, but we got to get you back on this project.
Brilliant.
So, people just move around, and it's not very fun as a creative person to live in the past. You always want to be growing. Like, this is just from my artist standpoint, I don't want to still be drawing the same things now as I was 10 years ago, because that would be awful. I want to be, expanding on that and, being creative, letting the juices flow and evolve naturally.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And probably a good point just to, I guess, segue. It's not even a segue, it's a blunt force transition.
We're gonna make it happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen regardless or not. With BlizzCon. And I guess we're kind of bouncing off the idea of community and things like that. You guys are fortunate enough to be going to BlizzCon. You've got your tickets. Yeah. I haven't got my tickets. I'm going to be one of those little virtual. Unfortunately, that's the downside of living in the UK. I think the first set of tickets went on sale at 4 a.m. our time on a weekday.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was a no. And then Saturday, I think they were on sale for like 6 minutes. And in fact, it happened. The embarrassing thing is I realised they'd sold out when I got a text from one of my colleagues on Epic Geek saying, "Are you going to buy tickets?" And I'd missed it by about 27 minutes. No. I was like, yeah, they're on sale today, aren't they? So I'm just hoping I win the lottery and maybe I can go charity dinnering it or something like that.
LF BlizzCon, maybe.
Yeah, looking for BlizzCon. There's people who their plans change and they got to sell their tickets.
Yep.
True, that might be my way in. But you guys, obviously, you're going. What are you excited to see at this year's BlizzCon?
Oh man, the BlizzCon, we don't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess I could think back to when Overwatch was announced because we didn't know that was coming. But I'm pretty sure we're not going to get another WoW expansion announcement. There's always talk of Diablo or anything like that. You're always excited just for that. First of all, that opening ceremony. Because you never know what's going to happen. No. They could come off the wall and come out with a whole new game that we don't even have any clue about right now, or they couldn't. We don't know. That's one of the things I'm always excited about, because there's like that bated breath where you're just waiting and you're like, is there going to be something new? Is there going to be something exciting? And then even if something doesn't happen, like a few years ago when nothing was really announced, and we had like the awesome thing about what Geek is that Chris Metzen went over, it was still like an exciting, fun time, and that's like one of the best times of the con, no matter what happens. It's time to like kick off this event where everyone is there to be a fan of Blizzard. And that is what makes BlizzCon so outstanding, because not only do you get like the online community and like everybody that's in the online community, you're always trying to like find them and connect them in person there. But even the people that aren't part of like the online community, but they're just Blizzard fans, you can go and just geek out with them for a few days. No matter who they are, you don't have to know them or anything. You all know what you're talking about if you talk about a Blizzard game.
Yeah,
that's it. And obviously, things like Con Before the Storm, that's just announced that it's been fully funded, so that's happening again this year. And I guess bouncing off that point on community, I guess we've always been talking about community for the whole show, but it seems like it's just this perfect boiling pot. And again, I talk about this from a distance, and there's a reason this is in the show notes for anyone listening. Is because I just want to talk about BlizzCon to help me get over it, and so I can cry myself to sleep tonight. It's a boiling point for all these different, not just big communities, and like I'm not talking podcasts and YouTubes, but just this. I guess people who never would have a chance to actually, that's the wrong way of putting it. I guess people coming together who you wouldn't expect to come together, or perhaps wouldn't under any other circumstances than their fandom. And it's just, it's quite, amazing to watch that happen. So, in terms of summing up, and again, another doozy question, what is it like sort of being in the midst of it and going through those couple of days at BlizzCon?
I think, Kaz, I want you to answer this question, because I've been to a ton of BlizzCons, and you're kind of, you might have a fresher perspective on the first time I took you to BlizzCon, how I might have hyped it up, and then you got to experience it for yourself.
Right. So the first year that we got to go to BlizzCon is after we got married in 2013 is our first con that we got to go to, right?
The first one that we went together. Yeah, I went before a bunch, but
yeah.
Then
Frostee set it up to be like this awesome convention where it's like he showed me all his old pictures of the cool statues and the cool like throne that you could sit on, like the Lich King's throne, and all this stuff, and it was just telling me how awesome it was. I didn't even know there was a BlizzCon until we started dating. Like, I was a fan of Blizzard games and stuff, but I didn't know that there was a BlizzCon. But, you know, it was such a difference. You know, I'm an artist, and I go to lots of conventions selling my wares and just attending them because I'm a fan of the stuff. And BlizzCon has a totally different feeling than any other convention I've been to. There's a kind of energy and a community there that is unlike any convention, like any Comic-Con. Like, we went to Dragon Con this last year. I was excited for it because Dragon Con is this big, huge convention, right?
It is huge.
It is huge. It is way bigger than BlizzCon. But it didn't have the same feeling. There was still the same... There was like the buzz, everyone around who were all, you know, geeks and nerds and stuff. But they were all so divided. You'd see like the Star Trek people here and the, I don't know, Doctor Who over there and anime over there and video games in that corner. Right. So it was all still kind of divided.
Segmented, yeah.
Very segmented, and you know, you were just like passing through to get to different places. But at BlizzCon, it was like you're all united. You all know and love like all the developers, and that's what it's about. It's like going to see them, celebrating their work. There's a whole bunch of signing stations where you get to meet them. I love going to the panels and hearing the behind the scenes work that goes into, you know, the cinematics or the game or anything. And yeah, it's just, you have the epic music playing through through the convention. The lights are low, and there's like, you know, UV lights and colored lights everywhere, and it just is an awesome feeling. It makes
sensory overload.
Sensory overload completely, but it makes you feel epic. Like
awesome.
In the game, your character feels awesome and epic, and they do that at this convention. You just feel epic.
Yeah, it is so unique. There's no other convention I've ever been to where you can wait in the registration line and like make a best friend of just talking about, you know, video games that you play or whatever it might be. Like
the random person next to you.
You can turn to the person in front of you and you can have this conversation like you've been friends for years because you speak the same language. And then at the same time, you can just turn right back around in line and talk to another person and you can do the same thing. It's like, I don't even know how to explain like how outstanding that is to me. Like that we can all just be like one big fan base, even though, you know, we come from all walks of life, all parts of the world.
And I'm so glad you said that because you've done a great job actually of just conveying how amazing it is to be there in person. And you know, this would be my upcoming is my third BlizzCon. I've kind of known about it, but it's the third I've actually virtually attended. And you see that on the screen when you're watching the sessions specifically. You know, it goes without saying the esports has such a huge energy, and you see the energy of the audience that you can see in those videos when you're watching. But the thing you don't get to see is what happens outside of those sessions. You know, the floor itself. You kind of get a glimpse of it when they cut into the commentators and things, but you don't see that floor of the convention. You certainly don't see that exactly what you've described there. And you don't see the after parties in the same way unless you're following tweets and things like that. So I guess, you know, particularly on the evening events or anything else, I mean, what is it like to have that, I guess, you know, almost like downtime with people in the community? Because that probably is just the same, I imagine, but it's just I don't know. I'm struggling to explain it because
it's great. I mean, you get done. You spend all, like, if you're like me, you spend all day at the con. I stay there from like when it opens to when it closes, and I just maximize it. And then after that, you can go over to like the Hilton, for example, and for the entire evening, there's going to be, you know, people just hanging out. The lobby is completely filled. There's Blizzard fans everywhere. You're talking to, you know, people that just love to play games. You're talking to some of the most prominent people in the community, whether they're streamers or podcasters. And then you can sit down at a table in the lobby and there's like Russell Broward sitting there, you know, or
awesome.
like walking to the elevator last year was the first time I finally met Mike Morheim. He was just walking around. He's just chilling there. And he was just trying to get up to his room, you know, and we're kind of just both walking the same way. And I got to shake his hand and talk to him. And it's those kind of experiences that you don't get anywhere else, where, you know, whether you are the top of Blizzard basically, or you are somebody that is just playing the game. From one end of the spectrum to the other, you can all just come together and hang out, and it's just the parties just go on forever too. I mean, that's the cool thing. Places like Con Before the Storm have done a fantastic job of organizing great community events, and I think it's only going to get better this year. As they continue to make it bigger and better, and continue to take our feedback from the past years and organize it even better. It's only going to be a greater event this year. So if you want to go to Con Before the Storm, I'd recommend backing it, because those stretch goals are awesome too.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I'll bring up 2 points. Like when we were dating, we went and watched we bought the virtual ticket for BlizzCon 2011, was it?
I think it was 11, yeah.
And, even from watching that, you can tell that there's an energy and excitement there. But really, the mics don't quite pick up how loud the crowd is cheering.
No, you're right.
They don't pick it up. And so it may sound like the crowd is doing like a lackluster kind of woo. But at the convention, we're like all screaming our heads off.
It is way loud.
So it's a big difference from like even watching the streams to being there in real life.
And we have kind of a unique perspective on it too, because every year that Kaz has gone, we have been in the costume contest.
Oh, really?
Right. But I want to bring up another point before that. Hold on.
We'll come back.
So our first
we'll put a pin in that one.
Our first year that we went, we kind of weren't even a part of the Twitter community, right?
That's true. We barely had a presence in Twitter at that point.
I think like Worgen was following us.
All right,
maybe,
that's
maybe
good.
Worgen, yeah.
So that was about it. It was very minimal exposure to the Twitter community. And I guess it was the costume contest that kind of sprung us into the community and got us well known. So the difference between our first year and this last year that we went, when we all of a sudden had a ton more friends, we had, all the people on Twitter that were looking forward to meeting us, and we were looking forward to meet them. The people in our newly joined guild, because we just barely joined CTR like a little bit
right before last year's
BlizzCon. And so that just added a new element. Like the con itself was awesome, and just seeing everything that was there to offer, it was amazing. But then like having the added element of the people that you wanted to meet, that you knew from the game or knew from Twitter, it was great. Like just walking around and being like, oh, hey, I know you, remember me? And we'd just be like, oh, we're so happy to meet you. Anyway, it's crazy. And also, the costume contest has opened up a lot of things to me too, because there's about 100 people who get to be in the costume contest every year. And you get to spend a lot of time with these other cosplayers. And as an artist and a cosplayer, that's a very tight-knit community in itself. So a lot of
but also one of the most friendly,
friendly
communities, especially in the cosplay, as a general community. I think
the cosplay Blizzard community has a special flavor that is more friendly than the rest. But it's great because you've been posting your progress online of your cosplays all year, and then you're finally backstage, and you have like 2 hours backstage that we have to be waiting. But we're all just like, talking to each other, being like, oh yeah, I watched your progress on this. It turned out awesome. It looks so cool. And then it spurs conversations about how you built it. And just that to me as an artist, that's like a huge highlight. And basically you have to, if you want to be in the costume contest, you kind of have to dedicate the whole first day of the con to that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of, you have to make it to judging. You have to be backstage for a while before the thing sets up. But it's also, I don't know, selfishly one of the most awesome parts of the con when you get to walk out on stage in front of 20,000 people and hear them cheer for you as you walk across. That really makes you feel awesome. So that's a kind of unique perspective, but I'd highly encourage anybody who is interested in costumes and cosplay, give it a try. It's great. It's unlike any other cosplay contest I've been a part of.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. And you convinced me of something that I already thought, which is that I have to move to the States, preferably Anaheim, and just camp out there permanently. I guess, touching lightly on something, because I want to come back to costumes quickly before we end, but with the fact that, as you say, there's such an energy, there's so many reasons to want to go to these sort of things, and unfortunately, people like myself, it's a huge investment to go over there, fly out there, and do the whole logistical thing to be part of it. Although I think, certainly from what you've said, it's worth it without a doubt. But for those people who can't go for whatever reason, or just simply, for whatever reason, the traveling isn't available, I've always wondered whether it's possible that Blizzard could do more than one BlizzCon at the same time, in a sense. And I understand there's going to be logistical things, and it's going to cost so much more money, but do you think there's an appetite, even just within the states themselves, of doing more than one convention, either simultaneously with BlizzCon or just more sort of mini BlizzCons?
I think that there's definitely an appetite there that people would want. I mean, just the sheer number of people that try to get BlizzCon tickets alone is I think more of a testament that, if we could seat 100,000 people in BlizzCon, then they would, that's how many people would go or more.
Right.
But the keeping it to like a 20,000 person event makes it very manageable and also very fun for everybody there. So I understand why they limit it. When it comes to, you see other conventions like PAX that has like PAX East and PAX South and, regular PAX Prime and all that. They've kind of split themselves up, but they still have a big following, wherever they go.
Right.
I think that Blizzard kind of has that though. Kaz hitting right on where I was going to go. Things like Gamescom have almost become like a mini BlizzCon at this point.
True. Mm-hmm.
And, I think the fact that they announced Legion at Gamescom was them really kind of showing like, hey, we have BlizzCon and it's huge and we announced stuff there and that's all cool. But, we're a global company and we are, maybe they don't have their own convention, but they kind of stake their claim and really, raise the banner at places like Gamescom.
Right.
Because they put on their own costume contest there. They have all their games represented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Watching the Gamescom stream the past couple of years, it very much has the BlizzCon vibe to it. If you're just watching for the Blizzard stuff. So I would count that as a mini BlizzCon. And, they have their e-sporting events that they do all over the place that still, those events have that same energy as BlizzCon. You may not get the behind the scenes panels and stuff as much at those things, but you can still watch those from BlizzCon, watch them later and get all that information. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's very much other events that have the same vibe as BlizzCon that you can still go and connect to other gamers and do that. But, maybe doing a European centered BlizzCon might do them well. But yeah, it's a huge cost and time thing. I wonder if it would take away from them developing games is the only problem.
And it's a good point because you're right, not only Gamescom, but they even launches, when they do new expansions, they undoubtedly have a launch event, even here in the UK in London. So you're right, they have got a presence in other areas and other conventions, and I think it's just down to me being selfish and so
I don't blame you.
Yeah, because it's then again, you're right. If they were to say let's do another BlizzCon and they stuck it in Europe, it was almost undoubtedly, I think, be in Germany. So I'd end up still flying somewhere and having to get a hotel, and it wouldn't save me any time or money necessarily. So I just wouldn't understand what people are saying, which is even better. But I guess to wrap up that topic, you mentioned your own cosplay backgrounds. What is your most standout piece of cosplay that you've seen at a BlizzCon?
Oh, there's been so many.
Or choose a handful. I won't limit it to one because that's so unfair. Some notable mentions.
Let's see. I really love... Oh no, I can't even remember her cosplay name. I only remember her real name. Anyway, in 2011, I think it was 2011, she won with the Adjutant cosplay.
Mm-hmm.
That was the grand prize winner from StarCraft 2. And that was awesome to see. and seeing her other works in the other years was great. And I've become friends with her on Facebook, and we talk all the time. I don't remember her cosplay name, but her name's Avery. But yeah, she does fantastic work. It's great when I get to see people I follow and see their real life creations right there in front of me. From last year, all the winners, they're the person who won the grand prize was like somebody who made marine armor out of all hand-tooled leather. Now that didn't look like, people were confused because it didn't look super spectacular from the video, but if you saw it up close, there was so much detail, and it was all hand done, and it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, none of the cameras did that justice. It was like,
really,
you had to see it in person to really get the depth of what he'd done.
Yeah, and all the winners, like the honorable mentions and the secondary winners from last year, were amazing. And to see them up close and talk to the people as they were creating them. I think that Marine guy, who's like, I think his name is like Papa Cosplay or something. He's from
I think he's
Germany.
from like France or Germany, yeah.
No, yeah, he's from somewhere in France. And it was just cool. There is that international crowd that does manage to make it there. Kamui Cosplay is from Germany, and she comes almost every year. And even though she didn't compete this last year because she's already won a grand prize at BlizzCon, she's super nice to talk to. All her work is spectacular and so immaculate.
Yeah, like the winning one that she had.
It was like the Protoss Wizard.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
She mixed up a Protoss design with the Diablo Wizard, and it turned out spectacular. It was her own design, and it was awesome. It was immaculate. And, I got a picture with her. That's like one of my happy points is I have a picture of her with one of my cosplays when she ran up to me and she's like, "Oh, I followed you online and this looks so awesome." And I'm like, "Wow, senpai noticed me." So there's a lot of those moments, and it's great. I mean, really, if you go to BlizzCon, like, actually go up to these cosplayers and talk to them. Don't be shy. They love talking about their work and letting you observe it up close because they're proud of it. They put a lot of hours into it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, people have been building their cosplays for this BlizzCon since last BlizzCon.
Yep.
So like
they start the week they get home because they're so pumped up on energy and hype from BlizzCon that they just start right away. It's awesome.
There's some amazing stuff coming. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how tense it is for them to try and buy tickets when they've spent so long building up things, and then like, oh god, 7 minutes, go.
Yep. It is intense. And then getting into the costume contest, there's a sign up for that. That's like almost as intense.
They only take 100 entries, so you have to be on top of it. And there's a waiting list. So a lot of people are like, get really, really nervous when they're on the waiting list.
Jeez, I'm getting nervous just hearing about it, and I'm not going. So awesome. Well, in which case, we'll wrap it up there. I want to say thank you, Kaz, Frostee. Thank you so much for joining me on this sort of pioneering thing that I've done. I don't know what we're going to call it or anything like that. If anyone's got any suggestions for what we should call these, let me know. But I guess, the important thing is where can people check out the Worgen's Howl and follow you guys individually on Twitter as we sort of lead up to BlizzCon and beyond?
Definitely Worgen Howl. You can find us on Twitter at Worgen Howl. You can also go to worgenhowl.blogspot.com. That's our blog page. Any of our podcasts you can find them at frozenfoxradio.com. So we have, of course, the Worgen's Howl. We have Overwatch. We have Heroes of the Storm and Kaz's new show, which is covering just all general gaming. That's all there. So we kind of cover the full spectrum in the network. And our podcasts are on Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, and now Google Play Music, which is now hosting podcasts. So that's great. I'm excied to see them get into the market, I guess. Yeah. And you can always find me on Twitter. I'm at Frosty Fox. It's just FROSTEEFOX, and I will. You will probably get tired of my retweets. I know Kaz does, but I would love to talk to anybody. Whether you want to talk about games or anything like that, just hit me up.
Yeah, and you can find me on Twitter at Kazul_G_Fox. I don't know why I put those underscores in there, but
Too late to change it
Too
now, she
late.
said.
And you can, I will always tweet about my cosplay progress there, but if you want to see more of my cosplay specific stuff, you can go to Facebook and look up Kaz That's my little cosplay page.
Awesome, yeah.
And
She's got some new stuff she's working on. Hopefully this summer we'll get working on, right?
right, this year's cosplay, we're making Gen Greymane in Worgen form.
Jeez, wow. Awesome.
It'll be awesome.
Going all out.
I'm making Frostee wear this one. I kind of got burnt out with last year's cosplay, so he gets to wear the hot, heavy costume.
I was going to say, it sounds like it's going to be very warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's gone through 3 years in a row of it, so it was my turn.
Brilliant.
But yeah, you can find links to all my stuff through my Twitter. So that's the best place to follow.
Fantastic. And I do urge anyone listening, check these guys out. And, the Worgen's Howl, I started listening probably a couple of months ago and absolutely love it. And, please do support it and get in contact with the guys. If, you're going to BlizzCon or you're not, you're stuck at home like me for a weekend. And, it's going to be fantastic. But thank you again so much, guys. And, I'm sure we'll have a chance to, or hopefully do something like this again, either before BlizzCon or after BlizzCon.
Oh, thank you. It was truly a pleasure to be here.
Very fun. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, guys. So a big thank you again to my guests, the Worgen's Howl podcast. They're a show definitely worth checking out, and I'll put some links in the description below for you to check out their podcast, and also a couple of the other websites that we mentioned while we were talking through the show. And also thank you to you for listening. I really appreciate you joining us for this new pioneering adventure. I'm hoping to do a lot more of these in the future and make these a regular thing. So I'd be interested firstly to hear what you thought about this one, whether we could have done things differently or improved it in some way, but also if you've got any ideas, not only guests, but also just general ideas for what we could do in the future. At Geeks of Azeroth is our Twitter feed. Alternatively, just put some comments in the comments section of YouTube or wherever you can find us. Just post it and I'll see what I can do. I look forward to having you along for these in the future, and until then, keep having a great week in gaming.